Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, I guess it's just me. I don't know where the other guys are. We got a special guest, though, and that's Bèr Kessels. Do you want to introduce yourself again? Let people know who you are and why we keep having you back on.
So yeah, I'm Bèr. I'm freelance software developer. Hi there. And I'm at the moment a little bit in between some jobs, and we discussed the Fediverse and Mastodon last time, and I did work a lot. I did do a lot of work on that, so we thought that's a nice and interesting topic to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Valentino also just joined us. Valentino, you want to say hi?
Hey there. How's everybody doing?
All right. Doing great. Now, you're in Netherlands, aren't you?
Yeah.
Fair. So are you going to be at Rails World?
I don't, unfortunately. No, I didn't have a time at this when it was around. So
Okay.
yeah, no.
Well, if you are around, I'd love to meet you when I come out. So,
Okay, you are there.
yeah,
Oh,
I'm going to be
maybe
there.
I'll hop on the-
Ruby Rogues was selected as one of the podcasts that Buzzsprout paid for our hotel. Rails World gave us a ticket, and we gave away a ticket on a lottery. And anyway, it's cool stuff. So anyway, yeah, we're going to talk about Mastodon and the Fediverse. And it's kind of interesting because you're talking about the Fediverse like you can use it for more than just Mastodon. Because I kind of assumed that Mastodon kind of had its own Fediverse, and then maybe you could create like a distributed something else that also has its own Fediverse. So is that the way it works? Is it all independent, or is the Fediverse something that you can kind of build different kinds of things on the back of?
So it's actually both. So that's the best non-answer you can always give. But no, Mastodon is by far the biggest player in the Fediverse, and
Right.
there's a lot of other software that are interoperable with Mastodon. And then within the Fediverse, there is some software that isn't interoperable. We might remember Diaspora, another Ruby Rails project from a while ago. That's also part of the Fediverse, but they don't federate, as that's called, with Mastodon. So you can get your messages from Diaspora onto Mastodon very easily. And recently, a new player on this whole thing is Blue Sky. They don't
is
have
Blue
any
Sky
federation.
federated?
They don't have it. They have promised that it's there, and their whole protocol is federated, but it's not implemented yet. But the moment that they're going to put it on, they will be in some way part of the Fediverse, but they won't be federating directly with Mastodon. So you won't get your messages on that very easily.
Okay. So what kinds of things can you do and what kinds of things can't you do on the Fediverse? And Mastodon is probably an example that people understand fairly easily.
Yeah. So what's currently at this state is that a lot of existing social networks that we know, like Instagram, Twitter, maybe Facebook, what's it called, Reddit, all these kind of things, they are replicated or recreated on the Fediverse. So Mastodon is by far the biggest and the most famous ones, and it kind of resembles Twitter. Short messages, one or two images, maybe a video. And then there's PixelFed, which is another quite big project, and that's resembling Instagram quite well. So they have stories, they have video uploads. And then there is, what's it called? Lemmy, which is kind of like Reddit, and there is something that resembles YouTube, so you can share videos. So there's a lot of software, and the cool thing is that on your Mastodon account, you can actually follow someone who is on a PixelFed account. So to take it to the world of the big social media networks, on Twitter, you could just follow people on Instagram.
That makes sense. I mean, you kind of get a bit of a blend with Instagram and Facebook just because they're both owned by Meta. And so they have some
Mhm.
interplay, but it's not perfect. And, they don't make things super automatic. But yeah. Um, okay. So let's say that I wanted to build some kind of federated thing, right? Let's say I want to build a federated podcast something, right? How do I get started connecting it up to the Fediverse?
So the first thing is that you should connect with Adam Curry because he is actually working on this. But the second
I was just
the
listening to him
second best
actually.
thing. Okay, very good. Yeah, so he's big into this.
Uh-huh.
But the second thing is below all this is an official a W3C protocol, as is in
Oh,
it's
really?
published by W3C. Yeah, and that's called ActivityPub. So that's a protocol. They have it all described, and the first thing would be to just go and read that protocol. It's kind of dense, as W3C stuff tends to be, but it's pretty straightforward to start implementing it in the end. And basically, that's doing all the backend stuff. So that says this is how all the federated instances, as they are called, so the servers on the web, how they can communicate with each other.
Awesome. Yeah, I just found the Fediverse cat podcast thing. It's called Castopod. Yeah, so I kind of get the idea, right? So I put my podcast on Castopod, right? And then it federates and somebody on Mastodon can follow my Castopod account, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um so how does that actually work, right? Because if does it just show up as a post? Is that effectively what you're
So
sharing
that
around?
yeah. So that also depends a little on the implementation details of this. So Mastodon doesn't have a very good audio player, so it will probably just show up as a link, and if you click that, you'll go to your Castopod server where it starts playing. Probably something like that.
Oh,
But
okay.
if it's just an image, Mastodon can handle images just well, and all the Mastodon clients, your mobile phone apps, and so on, they all can handle images very well. So they'll just show up natively.
So yeah, I'm kind of glancing through um,
Mm.
the spec here, but I kind of want to ask you and let you explain it, and then I can just ask deeper questions. So let's say that um, I post my podcast to Castopod. How does it wind up in Mastodon then? Like, what does that protocol look like? What do I have to put together?
So first, people have to follow you. When someone follows you, their server announces to your server that I'm following you. So my server announces to your server, "Hi there, this guy over at that point is following you." And then the moment that
Hmm.
you post a new, make a new post online, it's basically just pushed by post requests onto all the servers that have said, okay, there's people following you here. So my server will then just receive a post from your server, and will handle it internally and deliver it to me over push notifications or whatever.
Okay, so then there's got to be some kind of protocol or some part of the spec here that says, so if I follow Bèr at,
Hmm.
you know, your federated service, if I follow you, then my server tells your server that I'm following you so that it knows to notify me when you post.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then my system is smart enough to know, okay, this is how I handle these kinds of messages, be it text or images or audio or video or something else.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, it says, okay, I have something of type or class, whatever type post or type audio, and I'll push it on to the other servers and then let them decide whether they want to handle it or can handle it.
Gotcha. I've kind of gotten into the nitty gritty of how this works, and I think it's fascinating.
Hmm.
But I think some people are probably wondering why, right? Why build federated applications, right? Why not just go build YouTube 2.0 or, podcast host 2.0 or whatever, or Twitter 2.0, blue sky, right? Why go to all the trouble of federating it, right? And I've heard different
Yep.
reasons, but I'm curious what you think the reasons are or why this would appeal to people.
So there's a lot of reasons indeed, and they range from very political to very technical. And but in the end, if you look at it very pragmatic, the web was actually built a long time ago. Was built to be
Mm-hmm.
federated, and I think the only federated part that we have actually left is email, which is pretty popular. I won't say that email works very well, but it still works, and it's federated because I can email someone from my Gmail to someone on Hotmail, and someone on Hotmail can
Mm-hmm.
someone to an obscure self-hosted email server somewhere, and that's fascinating that it works. And we kind of lost that when all the FANG big tech monopolies came along. And that's the political side of it. A lot of people want to move out from that, want to get away from these big tech companies and just want to do it themselves again. So, and everything
Right.
in between that.
Yeah, and usually that's what I'm hearing is more along the lines of, "Hey, we want to get out from under these big tech monopolies." And some of the reasons are I've heard accusations. I think some of them are well substantiated and some of them are less well substantiated regarding censorship. So,
Mhm.
Twitter and Facebook shadow banning people. I've heard, some people get bothered, so they say something about the COVID vaccine and they
Mhm.
get a
Yep.
warning on their stuff, right? And it's like, hey, look, I just want a neutral player that just lets me post whatever I want, and hopefully people are smart enough to figure out that I'm right. Or if I'm wrong, hopefully they're smart enough to figure out that I'm wrong and come tell me, right? Instead of having
Yep.
Facebook decide what's right and wrong, or Twitter or whoever. I've also heard concerns over privacy. So, and that's down to like Google and Gmail and stuff, right? Is if I'm using a third party or a federated system, then only the people who run my server will actually be able to see anything go by. And so if I'm really concerned about it, I set up my own server, and then the only thing anybody else sees is what gets federated out to the rest of the Fediverse. And so there's a
Yep.
certain level of independence and control that people get when they can run their own thing.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And without getting too deep into the politics, a lot of people when they see Mastodon, they accuse it of being very leftish. But Trump, with his social network of Truth Social, is actually
Truth
one of
Social.
the first big people who took Mastodon and joined the Fediverse. So that's on the Fediverse. It's the servers don't communicate that well, but yeah, it's interesting there. That people who are pushed off other networks, which you just said, they can just say, okay, well, you know what? I'll just run my own, and I'll make the rules. So there's something to be said for that.
So we were talking about kind of you said it was kind of a people flag it as left wing, and without getting too deep into the politics. Honestly, the politics are kind of interesting on this cuz I saw a lot of people moving off to Mastodon because they didn't like Elon Musk's politics. And so that's where it was getting flagged as a left wing thing. Um, but I know a whole bunch of people on the right wing that, at least in the US, that they moved off of Twitter and stuff a long time ago because they felt like they were being censored on Twitter or not being treated fairly on Twitter. And so they created their own little servers. And then basically people who wanted to follow them, they could join up other servers. One of the podcasts I listen to is called No Agenda, and they have their own Mastodon instance. And that's another thing that is interesting is they've talked about how some of the other Mastodon instances won't federate with No Agenda with theirs. And so, it looks like that's a thing too, right? Is if you don't want an association, or if you don't want, people from one server to have stuff showing up on your server or vice versa, apparently you can block them.
Yeah.
So
So
there's all
yeah,
kinds of
you can do
control
that
here.
on yeah, exactly. You can do that on personal level, just like you can just put on filters and blocks and so on.
Hmm.
Maybe you don't want to see certain words. I try to avoid most politics and news,
Hmm.
because I mean, especially on social media, it doesn't really add anything to my life. So I just filter it out. So
That's fair.
whenever there's certain words in there, I'll just okay, it'll just be blocked, or not necessarily blocked, but it just won't shut up. So that's filters. But you can also block accounts. So
Uh-huh.
when someone is bullying you or just being someone you don't like, then just block them, and they won't know. But then you don't see them, and they don't see your stuff anymore. But also servers can block other servers, and that's where it gets interesting. So quite some servers, they'll say, okay, we don't want any servers who allow hate speech, whatever they define as hate speech. They say
Uh-huh.
we don't want to. So we'll just block these servers outright, and then everyone on our server, whether they like it or not, won't by default see stuff on the other servers. I mean, people on that server
Right.
often can still follow someone if they really want, so they can go look up someone somewhere and then follow them, and that content will still reach them. Um,
Hmm.
but also not always, because it's also a spam measure. If servers there's also a lot of servers who are
Right.
just set up to spam, just like with email. They'll just do nothing, then send Viagra stuff around or whatever. Currently the spam is, I think it's NFTs now or anything. But the thing is, they'll block, and that stuff just won't reach any servers. But there's a lot of politics in this, indeed. So
Yeah.
servers will block other servers, and then based on politics, they will. And often they'll say, okay, server A, for example, maybe they allow a Truth Social, and server B, they have a very strong policy against anything doing with that. So they'll block Truth Social entirely. But then the question becomes, should they block server A as well? Because server A still allows it. And that's where kind of a rift comes up in this whole
Right.
Fediverse, that servers will start blocking servers who don't block other servers. And then you get kind of like big camps, and big walls or big gaps, whatever you call them. Um, I don't really like that, but that's the way it is, I think.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the, hey, let's cut off this end of the internet. I definitely see the
Yep.
spam measures, but yeah, I think more people talking about what they think or what they believe, in a well reasoned manner. It's like, hey, at least because I talk to people a lot that I just don't agree with politically or whatever. Um, and some of that's just down to the way that I'm involved. I'm actually running for state legislature right now. But we can have a discussion and come to understand each other and not necessarily have to, come at each other with big sticks. So,
Yep.
um, anyway, it's interesting, but I don't know. If you run the
Yep.
server, I guess you can block people. So,
Yep.
um,
And
Is
and and
all of
that's
that
the
stuff
cool thing
published?
about. Sorry.
which stuff?
So
Like the blocking? Like, yeah,
I
is
don't know.
all
Are the
of
block
the
lists
like
published?
privacy
Published?
aspects?
some do. Some of the servers will publish their block servers as a service to their potential new users, so that if you want to join that, and you're like, I want to see what they're blocking. For example, if you are part of a minority who is bullied, or you've had some bad experiences in the past and you want a safe space, then you'll look up servers that have very tight and very big block lists, probably. But if you're more into free speech, or don't
Hmm.
really mind, you might look to a server that has a very small block list. So that's the reason why some of these servers do publish it. Yeah, but it's all on
Yep.
their own. If they do it, then they put it on some wiki somewhere or something.
Makes sense. So if I'm working with apps that are on the Fediverse, I could conceivably have in my feed um like videos. I found a list here somewhere of like um the different Fediverse like apps or servers or whatever. But yes, you could have like videos from there was a video one, and you could have Instagram like stuff show up from the Instagram one that you
Hmm.
mentioned. You can have podcasts show up from Castapod. You can have um you can have them from all over the place, right? And have all kinds of different stuff show up. Whereas with most of these
Yep.
others, right, you get a certain set of things that they do and that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for example, one of the big players currently on the Fediverse is Nextcloud. It's a bit of an outlier because it's a file sharing system. It's like you host your own Dropbox kind of thing for people who don't know
Mhm.
it. um, and you can run it on your own. And but Nextcloud allows you to connect to the Fediverse, and then your files, the ones that you share publicly, will be shared with anyone who follows you. Um, and I don't really see how useful that would be to have my Mastodon app show me a file, just like
Right.
maybe a PDF that I could download. But this, I mean, it doesn't have a PDF viewer or something like that. So it's of yeah, it's useful, but not very useful to have that federated across types of networks. But within Nextcloud, it's probably very useful. Yeah. And then there's PeerTube, which is the big video service hosting thing. And because their videos are really big, they also don't push the videos over the whole network, because sometimes it's gigabytes of video, and then all the servers will receive the videos and start saving them locally. That won't work. So there too, there is the content isn't distributed entirely, but mostly it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but I could see like PeerTube, like they don't have to send the whole video, but they could send like an embed or, you know, something like that so that you
Yep.
can play it,
Yep.
right? Or URL for the
Yeah.
video.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what they do currently. Yeah. And then you stream it from their own server.
So what have you done with the Fediverse? Like what have you worked on? You said you worked on Mastodon. What kinds of things did you build into that?
I'm currently working on a pull request in Mastodon to have the search system. So it has a search feature. And when you host it yourself, so Mastodon is a Rails project, and it uses
Right.
Elasticsearch if you want search, or it falls back to Postgres internal search, like just basically like queries and stuff like that. And that just doesn't perform. And the other side, Elasticsearch, I mean, that performs very well, but it's really hard to set up. If you're just hosting it for you and two friends, then setting up an entire Elasticsearch cluster is probably not something you want to do. So I'm building an
Yeah.
adapter system in there that people can just plug in other search adapters. And for me, myself, I want Miley Search to be in there, but there might be other small, easy to host search services, indexing services that people want to use for that. So that's what I'm working on in my spare time in Mastodon currently. Um, yeah, and beside that, I worked a long time on what was called Flockingbird. Flockingbird aimed to be kind of a LinkedIn, so professional social networking on the Fediverse.
So I've heard a lot of people talk about how terribly difficult it is to prop up an instance or a server for Mastodon specifically. Have you experienced the same pain, kind of like plugging into the Fediverse?
I have certainly. So Mastodon is Rails, and Rails is, well, most of us are probably experienced Rails developers, and I've hosted a lot of Rails apps, so it's not that hard. But compared to other software, it's really hard. And if you're not familiar with Rails or Ruby at all, which many of the server admins will be, they just don't have any experience with Ruby or Rails, then it's really hard to get it running and to keep it running. So there are quite some alternatives, and the one that I'm really happy with, and I'm running myself, it's called GoToSocial, and it's written in Go, and it's just like a small binary that you plop on a server and boot up, and it deals all with its SSL certificates and everything itself. So it's really neat small project aimed at people who want to self-host this thing but don't want to deal with scaling up a big Rails system. But yeah, it's hard, and
Yeah,
I've
I set
helped.
up a Mastodon server as well.
Mhm. And how did it go?
So I think I started with a pre-built image on my hosting platform. I don't remember whether it was when I was on DigitalOcean or Linode, but it was like figuring out what all the configs were was a nightmare. Like setting up the hosting like that was done, right? I can't remember if it was Puma or
Mhm.
um Passenger or whatever. I just don't remember. But yeah, it was just this huge, it's like, oh, I can't run, and I don't have good error messages for which config you don't have yet. And yeah, so that was the problem. I think I finally found like a walkthrough that showed me how to do it, and then I just followed the step by step. And yeah, the Ruby app hosting stuff was familiar, but yeah, it was like you have to set up this, and you have to set up this, and you have to set up this, right? So I had to have email sending and a bunch of other things, and
No,
it showed me where to put all that stuff so that it would run. But yeah, you all can go sign up for a top end devs.social Mastodon account if you want.
oh, very nice. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and indeed, it rings very familiar that it's hard and that there's a lot of moving parts. Mastodon leans very heavily on Sidekick, which is quite familiar to most of Ruby devs, but it's another moving part that you have to tune and tweak. Its Postgres database is pretty complicated, so it's not very straightforward, just some tables and some models. It has quite some materialized views and stuff in there, and so there's a lot of moving parts, and that makes it really hard. But also it's fun. I help with
Mm-hmm.
Mastodon.nl, which is the Dutch Mastodon server, by tuning and tweaking their server. Basically, just keeping it float. If there's another increase of users, then everything starts squeaking, and we have to crank up some Sidekick workers, stuff like that. Yeah, that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about, you have this article on how the Fediverse never forgets. I thought it
Yeah.
was pretty interesting. Yeah, you talk about a lot of the privacy aspects of posting on the Fediverse, right? Because it's distributed, like managing the cleanup of like deletion requests, as an example. Like on Twitter, like you could say, "Oh, I'm going to delete my account," and Twitter will retroactively, go through and clean everything up and kind of, ghost you on their platform, right? But when
Yeah.
it's distributed, it's a little harder to do, right? Do you want to talk a little more about how maybe that works and how people can kind of be mindful of, you know, that aspect of it?
Yeah, so the thing is that Mastodon and most of the Fediverse software, they market themselves as being very privacy focused, and they are in a sense, but there's quite some aspects on this federation stuff that makes privacy really hard. And if you just look at the federation of email, if I send an email from my Yahoo account to your Gmail inbox, and I then delete the email on my side because I put some really awkward photos in there or whatever, I mean, they're still on your server, on your Gmail server. They're there, and there's no way that I, from my Yahoo server, can force that the Gmail server is going to delete that email. And that exactly the same works with Mastodon and all the Fediverse. If you post something there, it's out there, it's published, it's out of your hands. And a lot of people, they don't really understand that that's the case. And also the UX and UI of Mastodon doesn't really help with that, because they have a button which says delete. I mean, it's a kind of a false advertisement, I'd say, because you can delete something. Um, uh, uh, you can maybe ask to delete something, and then a deletion request is federated over the network, saying like,
Mhm.
"Hi, dear server, if you want, please could you delete this thing?" And if the server is online and not down or anything at that time, then they might choose to delete it, but they also might choose to not delete it.
Interesting. So, I guess that's another thing that I'd be interested in knowing is, yeah, um, I was just thinking about posts, but yeah, what do the
Mhm.
deletion requests just look like regular messages, or do they come in a different way?
No, they're just regular messages. So everything is just a message, and the message might have something attached to it. So there's the activity protocol has quite some messages, and basically it's just create, read, update, and delete, and then the thing which is attached to it says, okay, create this or update this or delete this. And those are federated over the network. But a server might not have implemented, for example, the update. They might say, okay, that's too difficult for us. We don't, once something is in, that's it. And if there's an update request, we just ignore it. Or they might ignore the deletion request. Yeah.
Yeah, you do mention though that there are like you do have a little bit of control over the distribution of your messages, uh, and how you can limit the reach of the post and choose not to deliver content to certain servers, as an example.
So yeah, no, that's exactly right. Actually, the server has that. So technically, seeing your server or my server, um, it can decide to what other servers it's going to publish something, and I can just tweak and set the privacy of a message. I can do that even in the UI of my Mastodon instance, and then it say, okay, just only distributed this to the people that I mentioned in the post, for example. Then it acts kind of like a private message, because it's only delivered at the servers of the people that I mentioned in the posts, and not to just any of my old followers.
I see.
Mm.
So this is probably like why a lot of people are starting to create their own servers, right? So they have a little more control over that distribution. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Well,
no, exactly.
the other thing is that I've seen some folks that they create it and they're trying to create a way for their community to come together. And so then if you can make these kinds of distributions just on your server or out to specific areas, then right, then you can use it as a communication channel for your group. And then it just has the added benefit, since it's federated, that hey, I can go follow people in other groups, or I can go participate in people with people on that server from this other server.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So one of the cool features that Mastodon has that's quite unfamiliar from Twitter is that it has a tab which is called local. So it's a local tab, and that's basically
Hmm.
just all the messages of all the people on your server. And if you, for example, are grouped around beekeeping and you're a bunch of beekeepers talking about beekeeping stuff, then that's a very interesting a tab to follow, because you'll just see all the topics of all the stuff going on your own server popping up there. So that's just vanilla basic Mastodon. And then there is a fork of Mastodon, and I forgot its name, but I can look it up later. But it's a fork, and it's focused entirely on this. So they put the local tab for and foremost, so that it's your home screen even, I think. And that's so that makes it pretty neat for local communities or targeted focus communities, like, for example, beekeeping or gardening or whatever hobby is of people
Hmm.
that they can gather around.
That's funny. I did a Google search for Mastodon fork, and it's showing me, I guess there's a brand of bicycle forks for the front of your bike with suspension on them.
Yeah, like what's on the horizon? Like where is this heading? Right?
They're gonna
Like
put it on the
it's
blockchain. That's where they're going.
I it's hard to I'm on Mastodon. I really like it. I like the, the federated aspect of it and how it's like encapsulates the
Mhm.
communities, right? Like there's a lot of great stuff. It almost reminds me of like, Google Groups or something. Like one of these ancient basically forums. uh that's just a little more interactive. But there's a lot of, there's Discord, right, as an example, that's to me competes similarly. Not that it's federated as much, uh, but people create their own, instances and can plug into the overall Discord network, right? And then you can join those individual servers in a similar way. I mean, it's not quite the same idea as the decentralized system that the Fediverse is, but like, what's the next value here, right?
So yeah,
Yeah.
one of the cool things is that a lot of big software and even smaller software of existing projects who don't really have a social network or never had it or don't have it anymore that much, they all announced that they're going to join the Fediverse. So, for example, Flickr, Tumblr, all these kind of things. They say, okay, we'll just go and join it, and that's an interesting prospect because if you just start off as a new startup and you have to build a social network, you start with 0 people. But if you start off with a social network that connects to the Fediverse, you start off with several million of users already right from the start. So that's interesting. And on that topic, there's also Meta. They have this new app called Threads. I think it's called Threads, and
Mhm.
they announced that somewhere this winter, but they promised it would be connecting to the Fediverse as well. So there's some big players moving in this space as well, and that's interesting. I think that also the smaller and the newer ones are joining, but also the big giants are looking into federating.
Yeah, that to me, it seems like so strange, right? Like if you have a commercial product, where's the value in
Mhm.
federating your distribution?
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's it's difficult. It's a difficult issue, I think. Business value isn't there, but a lot of people say that Meta does this so that they can at one side they can just be more vigilant in their own censorship, because if people feel censored they can just move off and go somewhere else. So if you have to censor, for example, the next president of the United States, that's going to be a tough decision, but it's much less tough decision if that president can just move to their own server and continue there. So that's one thing, and the other thing is that there's a lot of suits. Especially the European Union is looking very much into antitrust issues with all the social networks, and if they are federated, they can just say, okay,
Mhm.
well, no, we're not a monopoly. You see, we federate. You can set up your own server.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is that, because I thought about, "Oh, well, what would it take?" Right? Because I heard people complaining about the way that the social networks treated them, right? I'm going, "Okay,
Yep.
well, what would it take to have, like, a parallel one, right? A parallel Facebook or parallel Twitter?" And the problem is that getting my mom to switch off of Twitter or off of Facebook, sorry, you know, to interact with her friends and see pictures of my nieces and nephews and stuff like that, it's a hard sell, right? It's hard to get people to move that way. But if you federate, then I guess it cuts both ways in that, um, you may have people move off to a federated platform, but you may also attract people in from the federated platform. Or if you're putting up like threads and you're not tying deeply into the network that already exists in Facebook, then by federating, you give people more opportunities to connect with the people they want to be connected to. So the flip side is, yeah, it doesn't matter as much then which platform you're on. You'll go wherever they have the features that you want. So I don't know. I think there are some trade offs. It makes them look good, right? It's like, hey,
Yep.
we want to be part of the community and nice to everybody too. So
Yeah, there is a lot of hype in this as well. I think a lot of people and companies announced this just to jump on the hype train, like back with the blockchain stuff. Everyone suddenly was
yeah,
doing blockchain, even if they never really did anything. And I have a feeling that that's the case here as well. But on the other hand, it's steadily growing, and sometimes it's rapidly growing. This whole entire Fediverse. So there's still growth and there's still life there. So it's going strong, I think.
So if you're getting started, or somebody is getting started, and you wanted to like recommend, where do you point people at, right, to either start their own server or learn more about it? Like, do you have a go-to list, or is it kind of just like, hey, like figure it out?
So I would really advise against running your own server, and unless you're really into all this and you're already running a lot of servers and stuff and you really like that. But then that's the hobby, and that's more of the thing, is running servers than actually being part of a social network. But if you just want to be part of a social network and want to get started, I'd say just go to joinmastodon.org, and there's one server picked out, which is like kind of the main server by the developers of Mastodon
hmm
itself, and that's good enough. You can always move, so that's another thing. You don't
yeah,
really need to think too hard about what server to pick, where to go. You can always move, unless you really plan on misbehaving, whatever misbehaving might be from the get go. Then it's better to look for a service where you're allowed to misbehave,
hmm
because otherwise you'll be kicked off immediately, like within minutes, probably.
very cool. Anything else that we should be talking about when we talk about the Fediverse or Mastodon?
I had one more question. Like, when you mentioned like, okay, if you have a network already and you want to bring it to the Fediverse, like just high level, what is involved in that process? Is it really just a matter of like propping up your own server?
Yeah, so you need to put a server somewhere which talks ActivityPub, the protocol, which is basically just HTTP, but kind of specialized HTTP, as in the payload of the HTTP is specialized, and it's all described. And that's basically it. You just need an endpoint where other servers can post and put and delete requests to, and your server has to post and put and delete requests to all the other servers. That's all you have to do. And there's a lot of open source software which just does this. I mean, it's a Fediverse, as in an activity backend, and you can connect your own business logic or types or whatever to it.
So as a organization that has their network already, you would basically be creating users for your server like proactively. How does that like user aspect of it work?
So a user is actually not really a thing. They call them actors on the activity pub. But an actor is basically anyone who has what is called an inbox. And an inbox is an
Mhm.
endpoint where something can be HTTP posted to. So they can just deliver messages to your inbox. Anyone with an inbox is a user on the Fediverse. That's basically all you need.
So this is more of
Yeah.
like, okay, Facebook creates this app, Threads, that's on the Fediverse, and they're just like they send an email out to everybody and say, "Hey, come join the Fediverse," and they have to join their network, basically their server, in order for them to get like registered and post in that aspect of it. Or
Yeah,
are
no,
they
exactly. Yeah.
posting on behalf of actors?
So
Yeah.
on Mastodon, for example, you can just go sign up for your own. Well, you have to turn it on, but then you can allow people to just sign up as a user, right? And so then that user is effectively an actor with an inbox on that server. And so a lot of that just gets turned on by default, right? Automatically. And so then when they post, it goes in the outbox and gets sent off to everybody else. And when they follow somebody, then that person's stuff just starts dropping into their inbox.
Gotcha. So they create their server and all the inboxes for their users so that they
Yeah.
can post. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And the handle is it's a bit of a complicated thing as well, because people are used to, for example, on Twitter, being at Bearcast, that used to be my name there. And but here, like on the Fediverse, the server is an important part of your identity, because it's not just someone on Twitter; it's someone on a certain server. So I'd be at Bearcast at, and then the server name, or for example, Mastodon.nl, or one of the other ones where I'm around. But so basically, it's just a URL, but they flipped it a bit around to make it recognizable. But in the end, if you look at the activity pub protocol, it's just URL. That's all.
So do you have any recommended servers for people to join? And like, are there some like highly active, like Twitter style servers out there that are comparable in content?
Yeah, so the general one, Mastodon.social, which is the biggest one by far, and it's managed by the developers of Mastodon itself. That's a really neat one. One that I personally really like is Hakiderm,
Hmm.
set up by Chris Nova, who sadly passed away recently. But she's big in open source, and she set up a server, and it's a really friendly, nicely run server as well. Um, yeah, so basically that's one, and then I'd say just go look for, maybe for niches, if you're really big into whatever toots your horn. There's probably a Mastodon server for that, where you're allowed to post about that. Um,
Yeah, there's actually one for Ruby. It's ruby.social, I think.
exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's. I follow a lot of people on Ruby.social. Yeah.
Yeah. I've also seen people set it up so they have like a mastodon.social or a hachyderm.io or whatever, and then they post like all their personal stuff and political stuff and everything else there, and then they have a ruby.social account as well where they post the Ruby stuff, right? Because they're connecting with people on other things in the other spaces.
Yep.
So what about clients? Do you just use the browser, or do you have a particular app you use to connect and look at all the posts?
So yeah, there's a lot of really neat clients. So a part of the activity pub protocol is also client server interaction. So basically, what the API of the server should look like for mobile apps and so on. But unfortunately, Mastodon never implemented that. Or and so everyone currently implements the Mastodon API, which isn't an official standard, but might become one. I don't know. But so and that's also a very well described open API. And there's a lot of really cool Android apps, iPhone apps. Ivory is for the iPhone is really good. And personally, I use Elk.zone, which is a web app. It runs in the browser, but it connects to all of the servers. So and then I have all my accounts grouped into one tab on my browser, and it has a little bit nicer interface, I think, than Mastodon itself. Its interface.
Yeah, I posted a link we'll get in the show notes for Mastodon apps. There are a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. Well, I think I'm going to start pushing us towards wrapping up and picks. Um, Bèr, if people want to connect with you or they have questions about this stuff, how do they connect to you?
I think the easiest for now is on Mastodon. So at Bearcast at mastodon.nl is my main account. Just send me a DM message, whatever. And I blog about quite some stuff. related to Mastodon and the Fediverse as well on my personal website, berk.s. So that's where people can find me.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's do some picks and then we'll wrap it up. Valentino, do you have some picks for us?
Sure. I have this. I know you can't probably see it from the podcast, but it's a literal dumpster. That's graffitied. And every once in a while, I'll
Nice.
set a fire in there. I use it to to store all my electronics that I want to work on, and so I'll keep filling it up. And if it gets full, then I have to pull some out and use them. So I have a ton of microcontrollers that just need to be used, and so it was just kind of like a fun little desk toy. It's called the Dumpsty.
Nice. I'm going to throw out, I have game pick first. I don't remember because like last week I had something come up very last minute, couldn't make it. And it's been a few weeks since I played this. So I'm just going to put it out there. And if I picked it before, apologize. It's a game called Canvas. And what it is you have cards with sleeves on them, clear sleeves. And so you get to pick other cards that are transparent and you slide them in front of the sleeves. Is the way that you build your painting, and you make 3 paintings. There are rules about how they're judged, right? So you get ribbons, and the ribbons are worth a certain number of points. And so yes, you can draw cards out of the supply and put them into your hand. And if you don't want the first one, you can use a palette to skip it, but you only have so many palettes. And then if you pick up a card, you get all the palettes that are sitting on it. I mean, that's basically the entire game. Some of the fun elements to it are that you get kind of bizarre combinations, and there's a line there for with words on it, and so it'll name your painting for you, right? And so part of the game is when you complete a painting. So once you have 5 cards, you have to use 3 of them to complete a painting, or you can complete it early if you're ready. But yeah, when you complete a painting, you have to explain to everybody else why it's named what it's named and why you put those elements into it, right? As if you had painted it. And that was always fun. You don't get any points for creativity except for laughs, which is totally worth it. But yeah, it just has a bunch of symbols on the bottom. And so however those symbols go together according to the rules, that's what you get your ribbons for. Let me look it up on Board Game Geek real quick. But yeah, it's came out in 2021. Board Game Geek ranks it at weights it at a 1.64. So it's kind of an easy party game. It says 30 minutes. It was the first time for a few of us. It took a little longer. And some people really agonize over picking the cards from the supply. So, I think our game took a little longer. There were 6 of us. And so I think somebody teamed up with somebody else because it's a 1 to 5 player. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I'm going to pick Canvas. And then, yeah, I'm excited to go to Rails World. And yeah, I've already set up an interview with DHH. We're going to be talking about Kamal, which was Maersk. I don't know why they called it Maersk, but apparently there was something else called Maersk, and they had a copyright collision, so they changed it. So we'll be talking about that, and I'll be asking him about it. It just went to 1.0 like 2 days ago, so that should be really good. I am looking at setting up other podcast or other interviews. So if you're there and you have something interesting to talk about, let me know. And then finally, one other thing that I'm offering free one-on-one face-to-face coaching if you are in or near Amsterdam. So if you want to talk about podcasting and you want help with that, or if you want to talk about your career, those are kind of the things that I've been helping people with the most lately. No sales pitch. I am offering coaching, but I'll just help you. And then if you ask me about coaching, then then we'll see what we can line up on a more permanent paid setup. But otherwise, I'm not going to push you to sign up. But yeah, there's I just set up a calendar. You can email me, chuck@topenddevs.com, and I will send you a link to the calendar. I only have like 9 spots, and so I'm a little concerned that they'll fill up if I just put the thing out there. So I want people who are serious enough to email me. One last thing related to Amsterdam. So 2 things. Maybe I should pick them after I go, but no, I'm just going to pick them now. So there are 2 things that I've been wanting to go see or do on my last trips to Amsterdam. One of them is Anne Frank's house. Last time I was in Amsterdam, it turned out that they open up the tickets like 4 weeks or something in advance. And when they're gone, and they were gone, right? Somebody had already paid for all of them. So I couldn't go. So I made sure to get them this time. So I'm excited for that. And then the other thing is I'm going to Leiden. Bèr, I'm guessing you know where that is. I have no idea.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. My
So
sister-in-law lives there,
Leiden,
actually.
what was that?
My sister-in-law lives there. She has a boat.
Oh, okay.
She lives on the boat. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun doing the canal tours and seeing, people legit live on the boats on the canals. But anyway, so Leiden is where the American pilgrims lived before they left Europe and, came to Plymouth. And I had 4 or 5 ancestors that came over on the Mayflower. And so I'm just going to go over there and just wander the town. I think there's a museum there too for the American pilgrims. So I'm going to go check that out. Just as kind of a family history thing for me and a patriotic thing for me. And I'm pretty excited about that. So those are the things that I'm doing. And then, do a bunch of coaching and hear about awesome stuff with Rails. So, those are my picks. Bèr, what are your picks?
I have one. I recently found out that a book which is written by someone who lives in my village, and it plays in my village. It's Dutch. It's originally a Dutch novel. It's called Hex, and it was translated to English. It was actually rewritten for the American market. It was a very big book, as in big, as in very popular, and even Spielberg himself was very excited about it. So it's a cool book, and I found out recently that it had been translated to English for the American market. So I started rereading it, and it's still as much fun, but it's not as much fun as reading about your own village and about the supermarket in your own village and so on. It's kind of a horror thriller thing. It's a really neat book.
All right. Well, I think we've covered it all. So let's go ahead and wrap up. And until next time, max out, everybody.